An aerodrome is a defined area on land, including any runways, taxiways, ramp areas, lighting installations, and other equipment intended to be used, wholly or in part, for the arrival, departure, and movement of aircraft. At an aerodrome where air traffic control services are provided, control of aircraft flying in accordance with Visual Flight Rules, VFR, is usually accomplished from a control tower high above the level of the aerodrome surface. The elevation of the control tower helps aerodrome controllers during visual meteorological conditions, VMC, to maintain a continuous watch over the area of the aerodrome and the sky within the visual range of the human eye. The radio telephone is used to communicate with pilots of aircraft. A control zone is a controlled airspace around the aerodrome which extends upwards from the surface of the earth to a specified upper limit. It is not necessary for VFR operations, but it is required when air traffic services are provided to instrument flight rule flights. Controllers in aerodrome control towers shall issue information and clearances to aircraft under their control to achieve a safe, orderly, and expeditious flow of aircraft traffic on and in the vicinity of an aerodrome with the objective of preventing collisions. Collisions must be prevented between aircraft flying in the aerodrome circuit. Radio contact is generally established by pilots of aircraft approaching an aerodrome while they are some distance away. The air traffic controller then plans ahead for their approach and entrance into the aerodrome traffic circuit for the runway in use for landing aircraft. Pilots of many VFR flights report the position of their aircraft by reference to aeronautical charts showing well-defined ground markings which can be identified as visual reporting points. Railway tracks are easy to follow and definite positions can be established where roads cross the rail lines. Large rivers and the bridges over them provide accurate reporting points. Superhighways leading into cities usually have several points which a pilot can use to determine his position with relation to an aerodrome. Big cities have prominent features which show on charts, but a pilot must be sure that he picks a feature which will permit him to correctly report his position. Visual reporting points, so easily identified in the summer, change very much in appearance during the winter. So care must be taken in the winter months if position reports are to be very accurate. Other pilots flying in accordance with visual flight rules make use of radio aids to air navigation and report positions with reference to the radio aid. An aerodrome controller must know in detail the terrain, the visual landmarks, the radio navigational aids, and the location of other aerodromes within an area many miles in distance from his aerodrome. He must be able to form and retain a mental picture of the relative locations of aircraft as pilots report their positions. Through the use of internationally approved radio telephone phraseology, spoken clearly and at a moderate rate, controllers issue clearances for aircraft to enter the aerodrome traffic circuits. Before entering the traffic circuit, the aircraft shall be advised of the wind direction and speed, the number of the runway in use, and the altimeter setting. The clearance will also tell the pilot of an aircraft if the direction of the traffic circuit is to the right or to the left of the runway, in order that he may intelligently plan his entry into the circuit. Information about another aircraft may be given to a pilot at any time if the other aircraft is thought to constitute a hazard to the aircraft concerned. If an aircraft enters an aerodrome traffic circuit without proper authorization, it shall be permitted to land if its actions indicate it so desires. The aircraft traffic shall be described so as to facilitate recognition of it. A controller may ask another aircraft with which he is in contact to give way so as to remove as soon as possible the hazard introduced by the unauthorized operation. Controllers should learn to recognize emergency actions and render all assistance possible. A pilot must remember that when he is flying in visual meteorological conditions, it is also his responsibility to avoid collision with other aircraft. Sufficient separation shall be effected between aircraft in flight in the circuit to allow for the approved spacing of arriving and departing aircraft. Clearance to land is usually given as the number 1 aircraft is turning on the base leg of the circuit. Other aircraft following will be given approach sequence numbers behind the number 1 aircraft. A landing aircraft will not normally be permitted to cross the beginning of the runway on its final approach until the preceding departing aircraft has crossed the opposite end of the runway or has started a turn, or until any preceding landing aircraft is clear of the runway. Information about the condition of the runway, a change in wind speed or direction, may be given on final approach, or caution during landing may be advised due to possible wake turbulence created by preceding aircraft operations. Once the aircraft has completed its landing roll, a clearance to the nearest taxiway exit from the runway in use will be issued. The responsibility for aerodrome control VFR is not normally given to one man alone. Usually, at aerodromes having any volume of traffic, there will be assistant controllers. Aircraft moving about the aerodrome will be controlled by instructions originating from a ground control position manned by an assistant controller, who has within his range of vision from the control tower the maneuvering area of the aerodrome. There must be coordination between controllers, and information shall be exchanged about all aircraft for which responsibility for control will be transferred from one control position to another. When a landing aircraft is clear of the runway in use, the pilot will be instructed to change to an appropriate radio frequency and contact the ground control position for further taxi clearance. When taxiing, a pilot's vision is limited. It is important, therefore, for the ground controller to issue concise instructions and adequate information to the pilot to assist him to determine the correct taxi routes and to avoid collision with other aircraft or objects. A pilot should also be warned of parked aircraft or aircraft being towed and other objects along or near its taxiing route. Sometimes, a small aircraft requiring customs and immigration service is being operated by a pilot unfamiliar with the aerodrome. The amount of taxi instructions required to get him to his destination on the maneuvering area is often far greater than those required for his landing. As far as practicable, aircraft should not be permitted to taxi on the runway in use. The guiding principle in handling taxiing traffic is keep the runway in use clear as much as possible. In the event of radio failure, very bright light signals of green, red, or white can be aimed as a beam of light directly at the pilot of an aircraft on the aerodrome, and control signals flash to him. Vehicles on the aerodrome may also be controlled by light signals in an emergency. Light signals may be directed to aircraft in flight around an aerodrome. Pilots should watch the tower at points in the traffic circuit where they would normally receive radio clearances. The pilot of a departing aircraft initiates a radio call to the ground controller stating his position on the aerodrome and requests a taxi clearance. The clearance to taxi also gives the route of the taxi circuit, the number of the runway in use, the wind speed and direction, and the altimeter setting. While taxiing, the departing aircraft is also given a time check, an air traffic clearance if appropriate, and for turbine-powered aircraft, the ambient air temperature for the runway to be used. The limit of the taxi clearance is to a point on the taxiway well clear of the beginning of the runway in use. Here the engines may be checked. Ground controllers must take care that no small aircraft are in the prop wash or jet blast of large aircraft. The aircraft may be cleared into a third position on the runway, but will only be permitted to commence takeoff when the preceding departing aircraft has crossed the opposite end of the runway or has started a turn, or after a landing aircraft is clear of the runway. After takeoff, additional aerodrome control instructions may be given in order to provide proper separation from other aircraft traffic known to be flying in the vicinity of the aerodrome. There are many other requirements, in addition to those we have seen, which affect the way controllers provide air traffic services to aircraft on or in the vicinity of controlled aerodromes. For example, helicopter flight paths require special attention from aerodrome controllers in order to ensure that safe separation from fixed-wing aircraft is provided. If there are other aerodromes nearby or within a control zone, traffic at all aerodromes within such a zone shall be coordinated so that traffic circuits do not conflict. Care should be taken by controllers to help ensure that small aircraft under their control do not fly into an area of turbulence created by a large jet transport approaching to land at another aerodrome. The pilot of an aircraft taking off or landing on a designated water channel in a control zone will be required to be in radio contact with the appropriate aerodrome control tower to obtain clearances which will prevent his operations from conflicting with other aircraft traffic. The operation of aeronautical ground lights, centrally controlled from an aerodrome tower, is obviously a very important part of the air traffic services provided by controllers. Approach and runway lighting, obstruction lights, and taxiway lights all play a part in the safe, orderly movement of aircraft traffic. Information on aerodrome conditions which might affect the safety of aircraft operations is made known to pilots in sufficient time for them to make proper use of the information. Essential information such as construction work near the runway, slippery condition of runways or taxiways, snow removal operations, or the failure or irregular functioning of aerodrome lighting systems is the type of information given to pilots. An air show may, with the consent of the proper authorities, be the reason for an aerodrome being closed to all traffic for a few hours. Notices to airmen are published or transmitted to other areas well in advance of the closing. The role of aerodrome controllers during such events is to stand by in case emergency services are required, and to prevent aircraft from flying into the immediate vicinity of the aerodrome during the air show. International exhibitions located near an aerodrome may require a restricted airspace in order to protect the throngs of people on the ground from injuries which might occur if an aircraft crash-landed on the site. Pilots flying into and out from the aerodrome must be directed around the restricted area. Aerodrome control, VFR, may seem a simple matter to the pilot of an aircraft flying in the circuit during visual meteorological conditions, for he is mainly concerned with just one aircraft, his own, as it approaches to land. Aerodrome controllers, however, know that there are tremendous responsibilities associated with air traffic control work. Trouble may come at any time. Therefore, many different kinds of alerting services are provided from the control tower to help deal with emergencies should they occur during aerodrome control of VFR flights.